Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 28 of the Office Hours podcast. As we are approaching our 30th episode, things are getting better and better, we hope. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hey, Mo, how was your week?
It was good. It's been good actually. Um, we have more better weather now, so yeah, the blues are getting away, and now it's getting warm. We have more sunlight. It's good. It's
Nice,
really good. I'm enjoying it.
nice. No,
You?
we get the opposite. We get the rain and snow all of a sudden. And my parents just came back from Mexico and they got a plenty of sun, so I'm kind of jealous a little bit. I wish I could go to sometime soon. So hopefully it'll happen. But we'll see.
What? Yeah. Would you? Which part of Mexico would you want to go?
I never been, so I don't really know. But somewhere
Okay.
somewhere nice on a beach,
With the
with
sun.
sun and warm weather and nice swimming and just
Yeah,
chilling out. Yeah, yeah.
that'd be really good. I was just talking about this with my friend just now.
Mm,
We're talking about Cancun,
mm. Yeah,
and yeah, I think it's nice over there. You should say, we'll go.
yeah, yeah.
We'll go one day.
Apparently, it's quite popular, quite a popular destination.
Yeah. And I hope it's safe now because like if it's that popular, I just hope it's still safe to get it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
imagine it would be. I mean, uh, you know, tourists bring a lot of money. You don't want to upset that, so I imagine it should be
yeah.
pretty safe. Yeah.
Okay. So we plan to host this. Anyway, how was work? Um,
It's good. It's good, Some stuff gets done. It's been kind of a little bit relaxed. Not like crazy relaxed, but still better than usual relaxed. Uh, you know, had some deployments. You know, a bit of a calm before the storm, maybe, because there's
yeah.
more projects in the
Mm,
pipeline
mm,
that are always on a horizon. But apart from that, it was pretty nice. So can't complain about that part.
yeah, this is the good part. So these days you have more time to sleep, more time for your games,
Yeah,
and
yeah. A
that
little
feels
bit
good,
more.
right?
It does. Well, yeah. I guess like if I'm too tired at work, then I just don't
Mhm.
really play games. I just like pass out in the evening. But now I'm more relaxed. It's like, yeah, I could play a game, and then you get sucked in. It's like, oh man, now I'm going to bed later. So, all in
Yeah,
all, it's a weird balance. But yeah,
yeah.
one thing that's kind of annoying me is like I'm having to deal with a bunch of Next.js magical BS, and it's just, man, I kind of starting to really dislike that whole ecosystem because, it's so not transparent. They just do this magical crap, and you're like, oh, yeah, like the thing you're trying to do, you can't do, period. And it's like, well, okay, great, you know. So
Why do you call it magical crap?
because it does things magically and no one really knows how it's working and you can't really look inside and you can't really change anything, like you can't tweak it to what you want to do, or if you can, you kind of have to redo a whole bunch of stuff from scratch almost. And so if you just get it out the door and you like use it for very basic purpose, then I guess it's good because you just have everything, batteries included. But as soon as you're trying to do anything slightly more sophisticated, you start hitting all the edge cases and all the rough edges and all that stuff. And it's just like, oh my God. Like now we're so invested into it, like we can't back out trivially, but it's putting all these things in our way. Like for instance, even the trivial stuff, right? Like we want to be able to trace our page loads with unique IDs and like all the API stuff they generate. And you can't trivially do that. Like I looked at how a Sentry plugin does it, and they literally just hook into Webpack and they start programmatically putting wrappers around all of the internal functionality when next code gets compiled. And it's like, I don't want to do that. Like their entire library for monitoring for Sentry does a bunch of like really kind of very low level fragile type of stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to re-implement that. And so yeah, I'm always more in favor for simpler things because there's too much complexity to keep track of. And you can never tell what they'll change next time and something might break again. It's just like, so yeah, not entirely pleased with that.
How do you how do you set up your centering? Do you have um a general monitor, or like do you have it for different parts of your application and then you just monitor the
Mm.
errors like separately,
Oh,
or you just have
there's like
one dump?
yeah, monitoring done by a different team. It's like on the SRE side of things, and they pull logs and aggregate them from a bunch of places, and they have like all these dashboards. But I haven't really had a chance to look into that side of things. They just we kind of roughly tell them what we want, and they build these dashboards for us. And I wish I understood how it works a little bit better. But right now, in terms of the apps that I'm working on, it's kind of like, yeah, some stuff gets reported somewhere and then some things happen and they appear on dashboards and alerts. But how how all of that happens, I have no idea. Which
Yeah,
is,
okay.
yeah, I probably should, but it's just so many things that I should learn about that this one is like somewhere in the middle of my list of priorities.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have to, you might use your time in
Yeah,
another place.
yeah. I mean,
But I was gonna ask you, right? Like
mm,
in the last year or two, what would you say is like something new that you've learned about, you know, in software development
something new.
as a tool, or like something new that
Mm.
you learned?
There's this library that I kind of like, sort of, before I even had a chance to use it, I thought that like, oh, this is pretty neat. It's called Effector, and it's like for business logic management. And I'm kind of trying to sneak it into various projects that I work on, and I can never get like a full chance to do that. But this time we have to rewrite a big
Mhm.
chunk of our functionality from just using React hooks because, you know, we didn't fully understand hooks because hooks,
Mhm.
again, it's like magical BS. It's like, how do hooks work? Who the hell knows? It's somewhere internal to the render and they do stuff. And if you screw it up, it won't even manifest quickly enough, but then everything is gonna get so weird and you can't like reason as clearly about it as you could with like the old class-based model. Or even before classes, I guess, before hooks were in, it was much easier to understand what React was doing. But because they have to optimize for performance, they do a bunch of magic stuff. And like even the new proposal for the use hook, where you you pass it an asynchronous function, but you do not await it, and it just magically does the thing because it does it like it splits it into different rendering phases. So your asynchronous stuff actually triggers a re-render, so you're not technically awaiting on it. And it's just like you're taking something that people have reasoned about and you're kind of twisting it inside out, and like it works, but then again, complexity. It's like makes so much harder to actually understand what's going on in intimate detail. So like we have these situations where like child components use effect to update their parent components. I don't know if it's the correct pattern because no one can really tell you what the correct pattern is. And it causes these like weird re-rendering loops that propagate and like knock some values out, or it's impossible to understand what happens and why. So I thought like, okay, we have to actually extract all of that logic into something that is consistent, that you can reason about, and then just interface it to React so we don't have to deal with any of that crap. But maybe at least I'll get to use the library that I always wanted to use.
Yeah. So this library, what's the name of the library?
Effector.
Effector.
Yeah.
Is it
It's
new? Is it like
it's been around for a couple of years. It's not very popular. It's quite it has a quite an interesting API. I think it gotten a lot of inspiration from like electronic circuitry. So some of the things are called as they would be in like electronic circuits. But
uh,
it is pretty neat. Like you build these
mhm.
computation graphs, and then it solves some of the problems for like excessive re-rendering or like the diamond problem or all these other things. And you kind of like produce these neat little API packages that expose they expose like controls and gauges, so to speak. Like you have methods to call where you want to trigger things, and it focuses on sort of more functional. All the side effects are handled by effects, hence the name effector, and everything else is predictable. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna do a prototype, and other people are doing prototypes and other things like Zastand or Zoostand or whatever you call it, and a couple other libraries. And we're probably gonna just present them all and see what feels best for ergonomics and understanding.
That's a competition.
Not really. I mean, people. I was just say it's like, hey, we need to do some state management and business logic management properly. Throw your candidates for the library you want to use into the ring. So now people would ultimately have to defend their choice.
So effector is gonna be a state manager.
It's more like business logic manager, and because a lot of it comes around to how different stores and effects interact with one another. So it's more of a how the data travels through your business pipes. It's kind of a more focused on that.
Interesting. Honestly, it's exciting. I feel like these days, I asked because like I noticed that sometimes we don't get to really like spend a lot of time to learn new things outside of the exact things that we do. So for example, like maybe you do like Angular or React for a long period of time and then you just get comfortable. You get really good at this, but you don't really know a lot about other things outside of like this kind of thing. So I was curious, and I also like realized that these days I feel with the way like people actually get to do like work these days with the whole AI things and like speaking of AI, speaking of AI,
The
did you
topic that
hear?
keeps on giving.
did you did you get did you get to try Copilot?
No, actually, I never tried any of those things. I don't know. I think we talked a little bit about it before. I kind of feel like the fact that I have to verify their work will occupy as much time to do the work. So it's kind of the trade-off is not worth it. And so here's an interesting thing. Like with Effector, there's also this methodology for front-end development, which is called feature slice design. And they have a chat, which is quite active. And recently somebody added like a GPT-based bot to the chat so you can ask it questions and it's trained on the chat content. So it's like it's trained on whatever people have been saying about how to do certain things using that methodology. So, and people are using the bot quite a lot, which annoys me because I constantly have these unread messages and they're all from a bot, and the bot posts like these long answers. But a lot of people say like, oh yeah, the bot is full of shit. It just tells you something completely random and arbitrary. And it's like, if I'm a newbie, I don't know that. And I like other people constantly have to sort of verify the bot's work. So it just kind of, there's no point. Like for every 9 good answers, it'll give you a terrible one and screw you up for a really long time. And like, why would I have to ask it and then check if it gave me the right answer? Maybe I should just ask people who can give me the right answer right away with more certainty.
Well, I don't know. But I guess.
Well, it keeps giving bad answers, so I can't trust it. So if I can't
Okay,
trust it, I'm not gonna use it, right?
this is legit. This is you. Like this is your choice. It's just like I was about to say that. Like these days, I started learning about how more and more companies are actually like integrating AI into their teams.
Yeah.
And I was literally on the phone when we're talking about vacation, my friend. We're talking about um how his team actually like set up Copilot for in their team and how they really work these things. They started to actually learn how to um orchestrate. What was the word he used? To use AI to actually like build things and like giving it instructions and all this kind of thing. So it sounded exciting to me, and he was worried like, oh, maybe he could get a bit smarter that he starts to like compete for
Hmm.
companies will now feel the need like maybe they don't need as much developers as they used to because somehow you could have um more done with less people and AI, if they actually like. So anyway, it was a thing we were just like discussing, and then I was wondering like if it's that adopted, first of all, because I think there are still parts of the industry, some people who still feel like we don't need it or like it's not that useful or like you have your opinions about it. So I was curious to see like how far it has gone in terms of like adoption, first of all, and how much we can actually expect it to help, you know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think that that's the goal. Like that's what people hope it would do. It's like reduce the number of bodies they have to hire because AI can help fewer people write more better code. That's what everybody's hoping for. I'm just not sure if that is a reality right now or how or when it would be a reality. And I think the other thing too, like from a layman's perspective, where they don't know that the bot is giving them wrong answers based on the amount of right or semi-right answers they get out of it, they have less and less reason to mistrust it. But for a person with the knowledge, as soon as they see it a bunch of times giving bogus answers or giving outright incorrect answers, it'll be like, well, that thing is not credible. Therefore, I'm not going to use it. I think we deployed some type of GPT bot on premise, and I noticed that some people on my team have used it. I don't know to what extent, but again, I haven't tried it. And, maybe it all goes to the point in future where the AI will replace me because I refuse to leverage it in my day-to-day job.
Yes.
But I don't know. I think last time we talked about it, I said I hope I'd be retired by then and wouldn't have to care
AI will be
because,
angry with you, Vasili,
yeah,
for not using it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's like if you go to a doctor and 10 times and one out of those 10 times he's just gonna prescribe you poison. It's like, whoops,
I would argue it's not poison, honestly, but again, we all have like you said, like we have what I noticed is that we all have different ways to work, like some people they learn that everything that they use for their work by heart. Like they memorize a lot of logic, a lot of things. Some people they know where to go look to find where it is. And some people also have to do certain type of research or like, look, different people have different ways to work as your skill improve. Maybe for you, because you've been doing this for many years, so you probably feel much more, you've gotten to a point where you can actually rely on what you know and maybe it helps you to feel like you don't really need to do much research anyway to
I mean, I
find
still I
what you
still
want to
do
do.
research. Like I probably could use the bots for like doing the summarization, leveraging that part. But the thing is, it's like I just had this analogy. I don't know how appropriate it is, but it's like a bunch of people with legs are looking around wheelchairs and the wheelchairs get more and more motorized so they go faster and it's like, well, you still have your own two legs. Like why are you so hyped up about a wheelchair? It's there for other reasons. Like you can use it, but if you have your own legs, like why would you?
Mm, mm,
So I,
mm,
I feel like a lot of people who are very excited about what the products of
mhm,
GPT, like,
mhm.
I don't know. It feels like maybe they don't know any better and they take a lot of it on
No,
faith. At least
no,
in the situations where I've seen people like again, like we deployed this GPT based code in a company And I talked also to people who are not developers primarily, but they have to write code for other things like data science or something. They're like really excited about GPT because it gives them things that work. And so why wouldn't they be excited about that? But if you start going more rigorously through the actual code that they have, it's probably going to be a messy pile. And if it fits their needs, fair enough. But, I have standards.
Well, but just my own opinion of your analogy is that it's not a wheelchair in this case, in this scenario. It would be more like a car. So you could use your car to go where you want, or you could walk. This is a choice, though. And I would put,
Well, if the car didn't drive you into a wall every 500 meters, I would use that car. But a car that like every once in a while, it ejects me from the seat or it drives into a wall, I don't want to use a car like that. Like,
you
sure,
know what?
it gets me
You know what?
places most of the time, but some of the time it's gonna make my life much worse. So that's my position. Like I don't trust
Yeah.
it.
No, it's good. This is good, but I don't think it drives you into a wall. I think there has been a lot of work done, and there's been a lot of improvement, and I see how far it could go. And maybe if you try it one day, or maybe if you end
Yeah,
up using it,
yeah,
listen,
maybe.
Vasily,
I don't know.
you could choose to walk, or you could choose to drive. This is your choice.
Every time you walk, you strengthen your legs, and every time you drive, you weaken them. And so, remember Wall-E, the cartoon, and all of the people in their little hover
Mhm,
things flying around, like
mhm,
unable to actually walk on their own because they're just so not used to it. Like that's, if you're not using something, it's gonna atrophy. Be that your muscles or your brain, it's all the same. Like use it or lose it, as the saying goes. And they're not using it, so they're gonna like you're at risk of losing your native talent. And then if something happens to your precious bot, what are you gonna do then? At least I can rely on my skills that I have been honing for last couple of decades, and I know that
mhm.
you know absent some horrible medical diagnosis, they're going to stay with me for as long as possible, and they're not going to go away. They might become irrelevant, which is different, but at least I know what I know, and I know that I can rely on it.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah, this
are you learning when you're using it, or are you just like, done, never even read it, just git commit and on to the next thing? So you never had a chance to actually analyze what happens and incorporate any of that. So I don't know. Anyway, I've like
no, this is
I've outlined my um, reservations about this whole thing like many times. So you know, it is what it is.
yeah, it is what it is. And the thing is, there is always like I'm looking forward to it. You see, I know for sure. Like there is this thing. Initially, when it started, I think our first conversation about it was that, oh, you said it was a shiny thing. It was gonna get away. It's gonna phase out. Okay, it's been like 2 years now or so, and it's still there. It's still shiny, and even have more other shining objects around it. They
Uh,
have cousins now.
how many billions of dollars Google lost on their launch of Gemini? Almost 100,
I don't know. I don't know,
because
but
the bot was producing completely outrageous output, and everyone was like, "What is this garbage?" It's just literally factually incorrect on all fronts, and it
mhm.
has massive bias. And the company's like, well, we are sorry that you have noticed. And they kind of scrambled it and shut it down. And like you could literally see the chart going like blop as soon as that happened. So, I mean, it's not really about stocks, prices, or whatever. It's more of a,
Mhm.
they created an AI that was biased as hell. It was producing absolute garbage results, and it cost them dearly. So it's like it's still in a realm of shiny things, and like it hasn't gone away in the last half a year, but half a year is not that long of a time.
It's not half a year. It's more than a year. It's about 2 years. And and the thing is, it's growing because there is So anyway, my point is like I know it's growing and I know we'll get to a point where like it's just I'm curious to see how far it goes. And it's interesting because I also know like no matter what, there will still be people who will prefer to work differently, who will prefer to do things differently. Like right now, I'm pretty sure like there are some calculations that you would want to do and you would
Sorry,
need a calculator.
1 second. I need to close my blinds because the sun is messing everything up.
Oh, okay.
It's raining and it's sunny at the same time. Um, yeah, it's getting
Mm.
better, and who's to say that we're not going to end up in a Terminator 2 Rise of the Machines type scenario in the end? But
We talked about this. This is not happening, Vasili. This is a
uh,
movie. We live it in the movie. That's it. There are things that happen in life, and there are things that we know can actually happen. If it
truth
does,
truth is stranger than fiction, as they say.
it's a movie, Vasili. We cannot live our life based on fears from movie.
I'm not
Someone
saying we
wrote
have
the
to live our
movie.
lives in fear. It's just like I think it's one of the possibilities that could happen eventually.
So we're gonna have some machine chasing the whole world. By the way, that only we're gonna have some machine chasing the whole world and shooting at the whole world. I don't understand. Like, do you believe this? Do you actually think it can happen?
No, I don't think so. Not in
Okay.
my lifetime anyway, so it's good.
I mean, for sure, like anything can, but I don't think this is the direction that it's going.
Well, I
I
mean,
think
you've seen those robots that Boston Dynamic makes. Slap a gun on it, and in fact, I think they do. I think they have like automated sentry robots, like in Korean border or something like that.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
we have computer vision that can detect things, and we can just easily tell one machine can tell other machine to pull the trigger, and when it detects something going through the DMZ, and like that's the first approximation. And then you put it on wheels and have it drive around once the self-driving algorithms are perfected. But hey, there you go. Like it doesn't really take that much. I mean, like, yeah, some sort of super intelligence trying to deliberately eradicate humanity, maybe that's a stretch, but some glitchy piece of shit robot with some weapon attached to it driving around indiscriminately shooting at things, I can totally see that happen. Like it doesn't really take much effort to put it in place. So, you know.
Everything works on the internet, so that there is a plug. There is a plug. It's whatever it is. It is gonna require like
But you see, you
intelligence,
know
some
how
sort.
military thinks, right? They're like, okay, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, they designed the internet to be resistant to damage. It just reroutes around it. And now with all of this, it's like, hey, we'll just use a mesh network. So it just be a mesh local area network that just wireless and self deploys and doesn't need any external infrastructure. And again, there you go. Like we already have all of the components to turn it into a complete shit show. We just haven't put it together in that particular way yet to make it happen.
I don't share this opinion, basically. Like, but maybe we'll see. We have time. Like, maybe we give it at least like 20 more
Yes.
years. But I
Yes.
genuinely don't.
Yeah.
Like, because I think in every part of life there has to be uh, change and you have to evolve. And I think like this helps different people, not just even developers. Like, it helps a lot of other people in different other parts of like industry discipline or like businesses. But for us, it's just the way it works for us. It's the way it's expected to work for us because it's like AI, so everybody expects it to be like techie and like know everything tech and whatnot. But of course, like this thing still is still in training, and I don't see. I'm curious to see how if we get to a point where like many companies or like a lot of it becomes a standard now, like show us your GPT, before we act. So when you're submitting your resume, you're also submitting your own GPT to see how smart it is. I hope I'm looking forward to if this can happen or like this, whatever. This is what I'm curious about. Like maybe one day. And also if it happens too, because we were talking today and then we're talking about how like some people say like, oh, it's still going to do something for you, something that usually takes you like 8 hours or like 2 days, you can finish it within 30 minutes. And then I was saying like this thing does not sound as easy as this because like I've tried to use it. I have experience with it and I know how it works and I know that even though it helps you to solve like the big things like that can take your time, for example, like research. Say for example, you're building a new application, you need like to build a plan for it, you need to build like the foundation, allow this kind of these parts. It can help you to to find the direction where you're going, like the research and like the beginning and also, but you have to know what you're doing too. So it gets me to think like if you
But it's like
if you
catch 22. You know, before you use it, you have to know what you're doing. But if you already know what you're doing, why are you using it then? Like, what benefit does it give you?
it's for example a calculator, you
But
don't just tell the calculator to
calculator gives you the right results every time. Well, not right results, but like given the same sequence of inputs, you're gonna get the same sequence of outputs every time. There's no, it's
because you
completely
don't
predictable. But GPTs are not. You know, you can ask it the same thing 5 different times. It can give you 5 different answers. But yeah.
no
Anyway, I don't know.
no no it doesn't give you
To be honest with you, I'm kind of bored of the whole AI conversation because we just keep restating the same points. It
no
doesn't really go
no
anywhere.
it's because the last time we talked about it, you told me like you had different views. So I was looking forward to hearing your new view about it. Like if you have changed your mind
Oh,
or if you see it
in that
differently.
sense, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember what was I saying. It's like it gives me some new appreciation, but in more theoretical terms. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that. But so far in practical terms, if I'm being pragmatic, I haven't seen anything
Mhm.
yet that makes me be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Like there's certain things that are amazing in a sense that you look at it and you're like, wow, this is something. But for practical use, I just don't see it making my life any better through practical means. So I don't spend that much time on it. Like I know
Mm,
of it and I just don't focus it on it nearly as much as you do apparently. It's like, okay, some new exciting developments in
mhm.
GPTs. Okay, yeah, well, looks cool, fair enough, whatever. I don't care. So like, I just don't care that much to be that invested into it.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm invested into it. I'm excited about it for sure. And I look forward to how far it goes. I'm excited
Mm.
about it. But it, I'm looking forward to, I will ask you again in like 3 months from now. I will see if you have a different opinion because I hope you do. I hope you because it'd be
But
nice
like
to see
on a
how
global scale, what difference does it
mhm,
make if I am excited about AIs or not, It's like,
how it's my personal achievement. This is me. This
right.
is for me. I would
Okay.
feel like I have convinced you to do something that you now like, you now enjoy. So it's a personal thing. But anyway, 3 months from now
Yeah.
we'll see.
Maybe
I have
maybe
another question for you.
maybe I should start convincing you to try what is that? That fermented shark meat from Iceland that's like really stinky and be like
What
you
is
should
that?
they have some national delicacy which is like this old school
Which
recipe
one?
where you just like bury the shark in the seawater and it ferments for 3 months and it stinks to high heaven and apparently it's like
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
you know super refined taste but most people find it gross and it's like I can keep trying to push you to try it but it's like if you
Did
don't
you
feel
try
like
it?
it like I haven't tried it myself I probably wouldn't want to and
See?
it's the same thing it's like I feel like I
No.
don't want it so why is somebody trying to convince me that I do where I know that I don't.
If you try it and you like, for example, um, the carnivore diet,
Yes.
for example, you tried it, you had good results about it, you felt it was good, and then you shared it with people who you think who would
Yeah.
also want it.
And then I stopped and then I stopped trying to do that because 99% of the time the response would not be in any
So,
way favorable. And it's like I'm wasting my time trying to convince this person of this thing that I know
mhm.
to be true. And so why bother wasting my time, you know?
By
Uh,
the way, do you still
I still
do that kind of
primarily do it, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, but you know, not as much as I'd like to. I should get better at it, but there's just too many temptations in my life, you know.
What is your biggest temptation now?
It's just all the snacks that we have around the house. Yeah, and I'm not the one buying them, just to be clear. So that is really difficult to do anything about because, you know, my diet, I can't deprive other people of what they like because I don't
Mhm.
like it. But, you know, having things in the house is what makes it extra difficult for me because they're just there. I know that there's something down there in the kitchen. I can just go and grab it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway, earlier you mentioned something about how um you work. You said you know a bunch of stuff like already, and you think will always be useful for you, barring any kind of injury or stuff like this. But I'm curious, and you mentioned the part where you think it could get obsolete. Do you ever feel like this happens as you progress in your career? Like, because I've been in conversations where some people, sometimes people talk, and then I've had like people question certain people's expertise on such subject, and these people have a lot of experience, like staff developers, like 20 years or whatever, vast amount of experience. But it seems like they have good experience, but when it comes to like the technologies and how we things are done right now, it feels like they are learning it. So, do you think there is a struggle, first of all, to learn new things as you advance, or like do you think it just gets to a point where like most of what you think you know are no longer relevant, and that puts you in a position where you're now learning new things?
Yeah. I think there's certainly a struggle, mostly because just new stuff comes out all the time. And at some point in time, it almost gets to a point where it's like, should I bother learning this knowing that it's likely going to be obsolete in 6 months? You know, in terms of the stuff that doesn't go away, I think it's just the overall analytical approach in thinking about problems and processes and like algorithms and stuff like that, because you might not necessarily care about the language as much. You can see the kind of the deeply rooted issues with it regardless of the language. Sure, like languages have their own quirks that add, you know, some spicy things on top of it that can throw you for a loop every once in a while. And even for myself, I feel like I'm behind on some areas, like the whole SRE business, the whole Kubernetes business. Like I'm not that great at it. I'm learning things as I go along. Like I definitely know more about it than I did, say, like 6 months ago, just through usage and kind of just understanding certain things about it. Uh, same as like ChatGPT. I kind of feel like this tool gets misused to some degree. It creates more complexity than it helps solve in some cases. I think in most cases the balance, like it barely balances out in terms of like the benefit you get versus the complexity and the cost that you put into it. And so
Benefits of what?
like having like running everything in Kubernetes, for instance, for your business applications. Again, because when we're dealing with distributed systems add this entirely alien layer of complexity on top of otherwise predictable things. And most people don't think about it that way, you know? And so the problem with a lot of these things is that it works in trivial scenarios, but it has a tendency to just generate completely in advanced scenarios. And the way you get to advanced scenarios is by starting with the simple scenarios, and then it just kind of naturally grows into this monstrosity that eventually you end up building, and then you lose all ability to reason about anything. And if things go south and something breaks, good luck with that. There's like very little predictability, unless you're an expert. But the problem is like a lot of developers, they're not experts in that field. They use it, but they're not experts. And then, everything happens for a while and everything goes well. And they're like, well, why do we need a team of 5 SREs where developers seemingly can manage to do it all on their own? And then shit hits the fan and nobody knows what's really going on. So same as like, even like just, we trade in complexity. That's our like primary currency. we're supposed to be getting rid of it, not increasing it. But all of the shiny fancy tools of the last decade just seemingly just pile on complexity and more complexity on top of one another. It used to be much simpler. It's so complicated now. So I don't know if it's like some sort of like gaining skills that so you don't get fired because nobody else really understands what's going on type situation that is just endemic to the entire industry. But yeah, things used to be much simpler and now they are not. And the thing is like, they were supposed to be solving all of the problems that we had with the old way, and they didn't solve all of them, and they brought new ones on top. Like, sure, they solved some, but they didn't solve all. So now we have some of the old problems plus all of the new problems. And at least with the old problems, we had them around for years and years and years and years, and we knew what to do with that for most part. But this thing, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm getting old. I just can't. I just can't grasp it as quickly and as easily as I did 20 years ago. And it's just like, okay, well, I have to stick to my skill set. And that's the other thing too. The temptation to stick to your skill set because you're much faster and better with it. Because when you're learning new tools, you just suck, and it's a really weird cognitive dissonance to be like, hey, I'm a senior developer or I'm a staff developer, but I suck ass because I just started learning this brand new tool and everything I make is kind of crappy. So there's like this big disconnect between your apparent position and the quality of your output. And you're like, if I switch back to what I was doing before, then at least my output is going to be on the same level. So it's all good. But if I'm doing this new thing, it looks like I don't know what I'm doing half the time because I don't, and it's not a good look. So
you think this happens like there is a struggle to learn certain things? But I'm curious, like I think the Kubernetes and like all these kind of things, this is mostly like DevOps stuff, right? Do you
yeah,
get to do this as part of your responsibilities too?
a little bit. At least I have to manage it, and I have to be able to diagnose it and troubleshoot it and do all these things. And when things go wrong, it's much harder to establish the root cause now, because there's like 10 layers of abstraction between you and the problem. And 10 years ago there were 5, and 20 years ago there were 2. So it was just easier to get to the bottom of things. Now it's like, oh, is it the cluster? Is it the cross-cluster communication? Is it the API gateway? Is it the load balancer? Is it some security appliance? Is it this? Is it that? Is it like weird DNS got injected, or some certificate has expired? You just have to check for so many more things before you can kind of narrow it down. So, and now there's all of the security groups, and like these hosts can access these resources from here, but you can't access it from where you are. Like, and you're trying to diagnosing things became so much more difficult recently.
Yeah.
And like even having all of the observability, again, like maybe if you have all of the observability and you can do it right, then you have a better idea. But most people don't do observability right. Like most people don't even do logging right. I mean, our logging is just ass because nobody really knows how to do it properly. And then as soon as you start doing it properly, they're like, oh, your log sync is just consuming too many resources. So can you dial it down? It's like, well, we needed to diagnose problems. It's like, yeah, but it costs too much, so you can't do that. Well, it's like, now before you buy a server, you put it in a rack, and you can max it out to 100% CPU utilization and nobody will blink an eye. Now as soon as you do that, the bills go up and everyone starts freaking out. So like you cannot even do that. So you're not only constrained by the complexity of it, but now there's like price that keeps varying depending on things you do. And then you do dumb things, you get billed more. Before, okay, maybe your server crashes, but at least the cost for the traffic uplink and the cost for electricity in a data center is same every month. Now you do some stupid mistake and you get $100,000 bill from your AWS, and you're just like, what am I supposed to do now? It's just more landmines and tripwires all over the place. So it's definitely harder to not even learn all of those things intimately, but just be aware of them in your periphery, so you could be like, okay, what are the things that I have to investigate for diagnosing this thing?
Yeah. Okay. So, but for you now, how do you balance this? Like for on your own side, like how do you balance the gaps, like learning the new thing? How are you balancing it?
I just say like, why should I bother, and get somebody else to do it.
You
No,
don't do it.
seriously. I mean, if I try, but sometimes I just don't have knowledge, and if it needs to be solved quickly, I basically find a person who knows it. And as much as I'd like to kind of
Mhm.
get into it and figure it out and understand, I just don't have time. There's so many different things that are happening. If I were to dedicate my entire attention to all of them, it never ends, right? And I can't reasonably say that yes, I should learn this thing and I should probably not learn that thing. It You never know. And if something happens more than once, then obviously you focus on that. But all of the random shit, it's just like, I can't be bothered. I have other things to do, which is
Yeah, but
not ideal, but it is what it is.
in this case, for like these tools that you mentioned, I think that for sure, like maybe you can't really be bothered because there is a department for this, right? But in case like let's say like things that are directly, let's say like a stack, I don't know, maybe let's use like if you work in Ruby, say like a like grape or something, or sidekick or something like this, that you probably would need to learn. And just because you've been in the industry for a long period
Right.
of time and
Yeah.
then you've seen different things and different
Yeah.
other places, like other ways to do these things, and you don't genuinely feel like we need it, but you
Yeah,
use
but
it.
the thing is, it's not just Sidekick, right? It's like Sidekick with Nginx on Alpine, inside Docker, inside a Kubernetes pod, inside a data center, inside availability zone. Like you have to consider all of those things. It used to be, yeah, it's just Sidekick, just restart the process and it's all good. Now it's like all of the things, and it's just digging down to the bottom of it is just so hard. And the other thing too, it's kind of funny. We had an incident recently. I'm not gonna go into much detail, but
We want the juice.
well, I cannot. But it was funny because I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's what happened. And I was like, guys, this is what's happening. And then they took like another 40 minutes to diagnose it and come to a conclusion that that was indeed what was happening. And I could just look at it and be like, that's the thing right there. And it was like, oh, still got it.
But must feel good for sure.
Yeah, it does. But then, I diagnosed it in like a dev environment. And for some reason, I had a brain fart and it's like, if it's busted in dev environment, is it also busted in prod? And I didn't think about that up until somebody's like, Oh, by the way, the prod is busted as well. And I was like, ah, crap! I knew about it like an hour ago. I should have. I could have started this whole process earlier, but for some reason, I thought that it was isolated, and it wasn't.
But how do you get, okay, so I don't want to put you in a position to actually explain the more details, but I'm curious, like,
Hmm.
what's your development process like? Like, if you do you get to do your tests? Because if you have like a tool that a lot of with a lot of users, I would imagine that you probably have like stricter QAs or QA processes. Like, do you do your own QA yourself, or like do you have a department for
No,
this?
we have QA. The thing is like some of these things that happen, like occasionally, yeah, it's kind of funny, you know. We use TypeScript, and I'm always kind of railing on people who are using like casting indiscriminately and things like that. And I was like, casting is unsafe. It could blow up in your face one day. And then, you know, some time ago, we had some issue where some content got changed in an external system, and that actually caused thing to blow up in runtime because when it was doing a check, somebody used a cast and they just like, oh yeah, we guarantee that this data will be there. And that time that data wasn't there and everything crashed. And I was
Mm.
like, told you, freaking told you, you know, that's why, you know. But again, that code was put in under some dubious circumstances when everyone was kind of like running around, and it was like, fuck it, just put it in, get it into prod, we'll deal with it later. And then, you know, the later came in the form of, you know, an
Mm.
outage. So a lot of these weird errors usually happen on the integration scale, like between different systems. And so I find that sometimes when I diagnose issues, it just pays to be knowledgeable in more than just your immediate area. Like I know about how you know, certificates work for SSL, and I know how to use the tools to diagnose them through command line when you don't have much available. And it's like, because like sure, I do web dev, that's kind of my wheelhouse, but I've been outside of it on so many different tangents, and all of them eventually come into play. It's like that movie Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you know? A bunch of random unrelated events that happen sometime in your life perfectly coalesce in this moment to give you an answer to the problem that you're having in front of you. And if you haven't had those experiences, you would not have gotten it. And that's basically my approach. Like I can't verbalize how I do it. I'll have a lot of like lately I have a lot of intuitions, and a lot of times they are correct. And I have all of those intuitions because I've been exposed to so many different things. So the advice in this case would be don't just stick to what you know, actively try to learn new things. And contrary to what we're talking about, but I had a chance to learn all of them when I was in my early 20s, when I was still eager and able to learn all of the stuff because I had all of the time in the world and I didn't have like much craziness in terms of deadlines and projects and on a much higher level, right? And so that experience serves me now. So get the experience as much
So
as you can.
in their 20s.
Well, whenever, when I think it's just mentally easier, and it's easier in terms of time of how much time you can allot to doing it. Because again, you know, when I just graduated college, I work my 9 to 5 and I'm single, and all of the other time I can spend on whatever I want, and I chose to spend it on poking around various computer things. Now, you know, the house, the family, the day job at a much higher level than it was back then, like more responsibility, more
Mhm.
in-depth stuff, as opposed to here's your ticket, work on it, and when you're done, you're good, right? You can just stop thinking about it. It's we kind of talked about it in the previous one, where it's like
Yeah.
as your level gets higher, as the things get more complex, you have less and less time and desire to, you know, start branching out and learning different things. Maybe
Mm.
that's maybe not universal. Maybe that's just me, because I still know a bunch of people and they like do all this crazy shit outside of their normal work. I'm like, oh man, how did they do that? I don't know.
We
I
try. We
yeah.
try.
Yeah, we try. I do a little bit of that, but not nearly as much and not nearly as much as I want to. But I have other pursuits too. Again, before it was my only pursuit. I didn't do anything else pretty much for the longest time. And yeah, if you focus all of your attention in one place, you're gonna get results. But if your attention is divided among other things, you're not gonna get as much result in any of them. But it makes life a little bit more interesting than just doing the same thing over and over again. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, this is true. Anyway, but I have a question for you. Like
Mm.
the how do you feel about the developers doing their their tests themselves and having a team of QAs do the test before getting which one would you prefer?
We have investigated ourselves and cleared ourselves of all wrongdoing.
No, but there will be a process to it. But how do you
Mm, I don't know. I mean, we had teams with dedicated QA. Dedicated QA is nice because QA is usually more mind numbing work. And so it's nice that if I don't have to do it. The problem with QA is that it just prolongs the process so much because it becomes this okay, we deployed the feature. QA is going to test it tomorrow. If they find some deficiencies, they're going to report them tomorrow, end of day. And then the day after, I have to deal with them and I have to deploy it again. And they're going to test it 2 days later. So something that could have been iterated on in 20 minutes now takes a week, right? Or maybe not 20 minutes, but like a day turns into a week and a week turns into a month. And it's very frustrating under these circumstances because stuff is just perpetually stuck in this QA hell. And it's not like I dislike QA. I understand that they're doing their job. It's just that having them as a separate dedicated resource just makes everything so slow. I want to be able to go like this. And in terms of like doing tests, we have this thing now that like forces us to have certain coverage percentages. But, tests are not a panacea either. People write crappy tests. And the thing is too, like, we have our test suite that runs, and there's like a bunch of warnings and other things that it outputs every time. And it's been like that for months. And no one kind of said like, hey, how come? So it shows that people don't read them, they don't care. As long as the thing doesn't fail outright and it just shows some amount of green at the end, they're good to go. Like nobody really is that invested into it, right? And I don't know if it's like a culture thing or whatever, but I don't know. People seemingly are more satisfied with mediocre results than they have a pursuit of excellence. But pursuit of excellence is a dangerous one because it takes infinity time to become excellent, and it takes normal amount of time to stay mediocre. So I don't know. Um,
what would you do? What would you suggest to fix this? How would you fix this? Do you intend to like bring it up?
it's a lot of these things for me. They kind of boil down to ninja refactorings, where if I find something, I try to like I look at it. And I had this problem before where I would find some kind of thing that is not really on point for the thing that I'm doing, but it bothers me. And I ended up spending way too much time fixing that thing versus working on my task. So that kind of backfired. So now I'm trying to do like a little, like I poke around. It's like, can I fix it within an hour? And if so, I'll just do it. And if not, maybe some opportunity will present itself later on. But I can't afford to get distracted by it too much. So recently I fixed a couple of opportunistic issues like that. But yeah, it's mostly about time management. And we're supposed to be getting more time for refactoring. Like if we were to refactor everything we want to refactor, we need to stop everything for like 2 months, and business is not going to give us that time. So, and the
So,
funny thing is that we built this new project, we built this whole new infrastructure, and we went through the growing pains of understanding what it is that we're building and what's the best way of building it, and we have some ideas on how to improve it in the future and how to kind of take it to its logical conclusion of what it should have been if we were to understand it properly the first time around. And now it's like, well, we're going to be migrating to this completely different system, so all of that probably will be scrapped in 3 months. So was there value in doing refactoring, not knowing that 3 months ago? If
well,
all like all software will die, and so there's only so much effort you can put into it, trying to keep it on, trying to better it, because chances are 6 months from now, like it's kind of what's that name? The thing, like if a thing have stayed around a long time, it is likely to stay around longer. And if a thing is brand new, it's more likely that it's not going to survive. So you have these projects, like I remember having the previous jobs, we had some system there was a project to obsolete it when I joined the organization, and like 3 years later, they were still nowhere even remotely close to doing that. So this one of those systems has been around for so long that everyone's too afraid to touch it. Meanwhile, some new things, they appear, they disappear. Nobody really pays attention to them.
yeah, yeah. But so now I'm curious, yeah, like if all systems die, and because of this reason, we don't invest a lot of effort, enough effort into refactoring. But sometimes this is not the only reason why you do refactor. For example, in your case, like there is a burning scenario. Like your test is there's an error, there's a message on your test result that needs attention, but you don't have the resources to invest in fixing this. This can turn out to be more problematic than the
Yeah,
2-3 hours that you will need to. This is a problem.
yeah,
Anyway, the question I was going to ask you is like, when you were just talking about this, I figured you might also like maybe be on a different side of the conversation that people usually have. Like, should we do refactor or should we just build a brand new system? You know, like most people have question marks around refactors, and some people, especially when it comes to like a business itself, like companies mostly don't invest a lot of money in refactor or maintenance because it's not billable. So this is for the company.
yeah,
But most times it's the devs that suggest the refactor, and like because of many reasons. It makes your life better, it makes the application probably work better, you can achieve better performance. There are different things that you can do, reasons for refactors. But how do you feel? Are
yeah.
you pro refactor or do whatever you want?
I'm broadly pro refactor. I think I probably am settling on a position of like the Pareto rule, just like fix 80% of deficiencies with 20% of the effort and just leave the rest, because it's going to take so much longer. And the thing is, with rebuilding a new system, like I've seen multiple attempts of existing system and people like, yeah, we just rewrite it from scratch because now we know what we're doing. And then they rewrite it, and it has like 90% coverage of all the functionality of the old application. And when people come for that last 10% of functionality, it wrecks their perfectly sound architecture, and it turns it into the convoluted mess that the original thing was in the first place, because that's how these things normally work, right? And so for most part, like from scratch rewrites are an extremely dangerous endeavor. They have been done, and I mean there are cases when there are being done, but I think, yeah, I don't know. You have to be really confident in your time and budget constraints to pull that off. Because people think like, oh, we know exactly what the old system is doing, therefore we can build it from scratch better in a shorter period of time. But that notion is false usually, because everybody sucks at estimating. Like, I haven't seen a single person who can estimate things in software accurately, myself included. It's a complete crapshoot. And, software work is like gas. It occupies the entire volume provided to it,
Yeah.
And so, but at the same, like, there's this weird tangent. Like, having artificial time constraints is bad too, because then the closer you get to the deadline, the more kind of frantic you get and the more garbage starts leaking through because you have to just shove it in to get it out the door at the right date. So that's not ideal. But then if you give too much time, they're going to use all of that time. So that's not ideal. So the question becomes how to balance that so that there isn't this constant sense of rush that you're in, having to cut corners and produce subpar quality, because that's very demoralizing. Like maybe if you work for some sort of sweatshop and you just stamp out these sites, like 20 sites a week, you don't give a shit. But if you're building a product, having to cut corners and sacrifice on quality is very demoralizing. And having to constantly be, trembling in a fear of the next deadline and that we don't have enough time and resources to finish everything and we have to like scramble things last minute, and it's just like, while the person doing the demo, the other person is like frantically changing code and pushing it to the source control to kind of make it fly just before the curtain opens. Like, that mode sucks ass too. But then again, it's like, yeah, we done it in a week and it's raw around the edges and it's kind of weird a bunch of places, but it's done in a week. Or, hey, we took 3 months to do the same thing, but now it's like of considerably better quality. Like, what's more important for business, right? I know what's better for everyone's state of mind and quote unquote mental health, but we don't always get that.
What is better for mental health?
Well, not having to freak out about deadlines all the time. That's clearly better for mental health, because the anxiety never really helps anyone.
Do you still feel this way? Like, does it, or like, and imagine that if you have done this for a long period of time, you get used to it and like you're not really like trembling for deadlines anymore. Like, you just
Yeah, you
you
do
just
get
know how you work.
it's kind of you do judiciously get used to it in a sense. It's like you've seen the deadline. The thing is too is the problem with artificial deadlines. They're twofold. It's almost like a parallel to the whole boy who cried wolf scenario. It's like, oh, we have a deadline, we have to deliver it by the deadline. And then we deliver it by the deadline. Everyone's like, high-fiving and patting everyone else on the back about how great it is. And then nothing. Like, nobody cares that we delivered it on Tuesday versus Friday. And when it happens several times, people are like, why are we even bothering doing this for this deadline if it didn't really matter, right? Like those hard deadlines, they should matter. They really should matter, where it's like, if you manage to, we were talking about it in Slack and I posted that gif of Indiana Jones, like snatching the hat from underneath the closing door. Because that's how it feels, right? You just like barely manage to like pull it through. And eventually it's like, well, why are we, what is even the point? Like, if no one cares, like, why do we have to tear ass and just destroy ourselves and not sleep and deliver if nobody really cares about it? And the longer you stay in this industry, the more things like that are going to happen and the more jaded you become because of it. So you sort of have this emotional callus built up where it used to bother you a lot, and now it's just like, whatever, another deadline, who gives a shit?
Yeah, this is what I imagine. Like, it's not like who gives a shit. It's more like, okay, there is a deadline and you used to working towards deadline. Like,
But
you
it normalizes the fact that we're likely going to miss our next deadline. And that is, again, it's still like, you can have the no, you can have a I don't give a shit attitude about it, but it's still demoralizing, because if you care about your craft, it's still gonna bug you at some level. You might not like visibly portray it or admit to it, and you'll be like, whatever, I don't care. But you do care. Like, I don't know. At least I personally, I still do care to some extent. And it maybe with years, it's kind of like the level of care is sort of shrinking. But I know that in order to remain good at what I do, I can't allow myself not to care, because the only way you can get better is by, caring about it. And so all of these demoralizing things eventually, I think, lead people to where they say, like, fuck IT. It's just not worth it anymore. And then they start doing carpentry or, beekeeping, and feel much better about themselves. So we're all on that same trajectory. It just hits some people sooner than later. But,
Are you going to do carpentry?
I don't know. I have a bunch of power tools. Maybe I'll pick up something else, but I don't know. The thing is like, this is the thing that puts bread on a table, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're doing the things you hate because you have to put bread on a table. But that's kind of the condition of most people is,
But if you were not working in this industry, what would you rather do? I think music. Maybe you would make music.
I'm kind of useless, to be honest with you. Like, I do this because I don't really know how to do anything else, and that's kind of scary, Like, in terms of tangible skills, I don't even know. I mean, I learn things quickly, so if it comes to that, but there's always flipping burgers.
Flipping burgers.
You can be excellent at flipping burgers too, given the right attitude. But I don't know. To answer your question, in what would I do that is commercially viable so I can sustain myself and my family outside of software, I have no idea. And that is kind of scary, because if anything happens, God forbid, I don't know, somebody detonates a nuke in the atmosphere and fries all electronics, and we get thrown back into Middle Ages, I have no idea what I would do.
I mean, you could do podcasting.
If we don't have technology, what would I do podcasting with? Clay tablets? I'll just like throw them from my backyard into neighbors and be like, hey, read my next installment. It's fun, I promise.
You could do fashion.
Fashion? I could probably. A model? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not the worst looking, but doing software for all this time, I definitely paid a toll, because I'm a freaking goblin, Like the way I sit, I sit like this all the time. It's not funny, So
no, but this is just a temporary.
Don't do programming, kids. Programming's bad.
You can fix though. I think you can fix this
Well, yeah, if I didn't have anything else, like if I didn't have to go to work, I would have more time for exercise, so I could probably fix it. So that's true.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Anyway, thank you, Vasili. Thank you for your time. It's a nice chatting with you again this week. Thank you for I know you didn't tell me how you feel about the ChatGPT thing, like AI, but in 3 months I'll ask you again.
Okay, 3 months. It's okay if it's in 3 months.
I hope you like it. I hope you like it.
Yeah,
I hope you change your mind.
Maybe.
This will be my personal achievement from this.
Okay. Now it's time to open the side bets and figure out. It's like, okay, how much? Like, bet a $5 that he likes it or he doesn't like it. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm fairly firm in my convictions. And besides, like, if ChatGPT is supposed to replace me and my job, why should I like it? It's only natural to dislike it,
This is why. Is this why?
Yeah. I think instead of learning ChatGPT, you should actually learn some appreciable skill, like carpentry or welding or something else that you can actually do with your hands. Something that ChatGPT cannot replace is You know,
Like
there
what?
was actually like a big banner on some high-rise construction somewhere. I think it was like in Dubai or something. And it was like this big construction project for some skyscraper, and it has this big banner that says ChatGPT this, because it's actually
Yeah,
people having to actually build it. So like ChatGPT is not gonna touch that, not in a million years.
you never
So
know. Maybe we'll have other things that are not ChatGPT that will
yeah.
probably be able to do these things too. Like you said, we're gonna have Terminators on the street.
Well, back in the day,
Mhm,
in the advent of industrial revolution, the prevailing thought
mhm.
was that, the machines are going to do all the work and we can dedicate our lives to leisurely pursuits. And that did not pan out at all. So whenever people say, "Oh, ChatGPT is going to do everything and we can dedicate our lives to leisurely pursuits," we've already seen how these things go, and there's really no reason to think it's going to go any different this time. So yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
you know my stance on this thing, and we'll
I
see
do. I
in three
mean, three
months.
months. In
Three
three
months.
months,
Yeah.
we'll have a check-in.
In 3 months,
Yeah.
maybe I'll live in the woods, and I'll have to record the podcast and send it by pigeon.
I
You
hope
know.
not. I really hope not. But if you like, honestly, living in the woods not bad. It's actually a good life. You get to breathe fresh air.
Yeah.
You kill your own meat. Yeah.
Yeah. Up until the point when you start reading about all the people who decided to go live in the woods and like died horrible deaths because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. You know.
My bad. Don't do it
Yeah.
then. Don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
See. Anyway, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mo. Thank you for the riveting conversation once more. And if you are with us still, and I hope you're enjoying this conversation, check out some of the other stuff that we have. Join the groups, join the Discord, join the Telegram, chat to us directly, and we'll see you in the next one. So thank you and have a great night.